Okay, so the ones that were codified on April 15th, right? Well, let's go through a couple of them. One is a booster requirement for people who work in healthcare facilities. Statistically, it's proven that folks who receive booster shots are far, 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 far less likely to be hospitalized or die of COVID-19. So we want to protect those workers and when they're in an environment where there might be higher transmission, and also our more elderly residents who are more vulnerable to the disease. The ability to bring retired teachers back. As masks come off in some schools, you might see higher transmission. We want to make sure retired teachers can come back. Two examples of those, Christine, that we think should continue to April 15th.
Okay, and then as far as masks are concerned, I know that you have a definite, a different opinion than some other people, and you're a parent too. So, I mean, would you say that the public is divided, or that they just want a choice? And, you know, what's so wrong about giving parents that choice?
I misspoke, by the way, Christine, and I think Jay and I can both answer this question as parents. The retired teacher thing ended up coming out, so I apologize. But, you know, there are those that could stick till April 15th. In terms of this, I don't think that certain public health measures can be solely left to parents when what your decision does could impact others. And that's the missing element here, is that I know there's a lot of emails coming in that say masks don't work. Well, that's not the scientific evidence that we've reviewed, and it did keep a lot of our kids in school. And so just like vaccines, when you say it's my choice, it's not true when you could injure or hurt other people. However, transmission is getting a lot lower. Positivity rates are getting a lot lower. And this particular variant is hopefully not, making people less sick as prior variants. So our commissioner, who's an infectious disease expert, said we can reevaluate the masks in schools. So it's not about my choice. It's about respecting all of the kids who have to go to that school and those teachers. Now, Jay, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
yeah, I don't know that there's much more rationale that needs to be explained to individuals here. And again, we're moving in a direction of where there probably will be less mask wearing in schools, and ultimately school districts will end up making some decisions that are in their own that they believe to be in the best interest of their school community.
But is it best to do it district by district then? I mean, because some kids will have masks in some towns and then other kids won't have masks in other towns.
I think with this particular variant, it may be, right? But one of the reasons we want to retain the right for the commissioners to reevaluate is if there's a different variant or different studies come out. But we don't think it's going to happen, right? We really believe optimistically, like a lot of other governors who have announced this and other states have announced this, that we're entering into a different phase. But we also thought that last fall, right? And then, the variant came in December and it did change some considerations. But I think we have to stop asking ourselves, is there any single best response to every single question? What we have to do is just say we have professionals and scientists who are doing their very best, and we're going to follow their lead. And I say that, if you asked me, I would have left the masks on probably through more of March, because that's the respiratory illness season. So I would have probably liked the Delaware model. If you ask Jason, he may have a completely different answer. If you ask 95 people in our caucus, they may have a different date in mind. That's why politicians and elected bodies is harder for us. And that's what we're going to try to follow the guidance of the CDC, in this case, the Public Health Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to Susan Rath, Channel 3.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay,
Yep, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. One of the things that the Republicans said at their presser moments ago was that the CT Unite program, which was put in place to prevent landlords from evicting people during the pandemic, is something you'd like to see restored. Is that correct?
It's not about a complete restoration of the program as much as it's including some additional protections for people who are in the process of getting evicted.
And my understanding, Susan, is that there are people who applied before the deadline, which is February 15th, right? They got their application in say, December. And that application has not been reviewed yet by DOH and the team that reviews these applications. My opinion is, from a legal perspective, the people who applied should have the right to have their application reviewed. If you apply after February 15th, you will not have the same protections probably. But in our mind, that makes a lot of sense.
And I apologize because I think when I had tuned in, Paul Hughes had asked us this question, but something else that was brought up earlier, where Republicans are kind of feeling that some of these mandates are not really following science, and that the health department in Connecticut has not done a good job, or any job at all. I think what they said was collecting data and real information, kind of insinuating you're going by the seat of your pants. That's the takeaway I got, what they were saying.
They have a handful of members who think that the COVID-19 vaccine puts a chip in your arm. So I don't really follow their lead on science either.
How do you think things are going to go today?
Fine, right, Jay? It'll be fine.
Yeah, we're going to go in, we're going to have a debate, we're going to have a vote, and we're going to continue on with the legislative session.
Thank you.
Chris Keating, Hartford Courant.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to clarify one thing first and then another question. Did you say the provision on the retired teachers is out? Did I hear you clearly on that?
My general counsel is to my left, and he said it came out. So,
Okay, so there's nothing on today's agenda that has to do with the retired teachers.
no, my bad.
Okay, no problem. Tell me about the school boards obviously oversee the schools. Tell me about the daycares. Who will oversee those? Will that be up to 169 town councils, or where do we go from here on daycare?
So my understanding, right, and this will probably be a question on the floor, is that I know this for a fact. Instead of SDE, it's OEC. So it's Commissioner Bai who makes the final decision for daycare centers if there's going to be a mask mandate. If she were to lift that mandate, right, then it would be up, I believe, to the individual private businesses. If a pre-K is in a public school, like my kid's school, there's actually a pre-K 3 and 4 in the elementary school. That would still rest with the local board. So I believe it is up to the private daycare centers. It's an interesting question of whether a town could require it, but our belief, they probably could. But we're not sure if towns would do that. They'd probably defer to the private daycare centers.
Okay, and a smaller question: do we have a count of how many daycare centers there are statewide? Anybody on your staff have that? Not immediately?
No, sorry, Chris. Maybe Google. I mean, I know who would probably have it, Chris, is OEC, I would imagine.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Ken Dixon, Hearst Media.
Thanks. I'm sorry I'm a little late. Thanks for doing this for us. Matt, what are the rules on masks in the chamber and in the Capitol at this point?
We still have a mask requirement in the chamber. I know that there was a handful of individuals yesterday who did not wear them. It got a little worse as the day went on, and the governor spoke. I will address it this morning. I know the minority leader and I have spoken about it. And I will also say this, right? I've asked my deputy speakers, I talked to the majority leader about this morning. I'll ask them to meet with some of the leaders of the Republican side to have a conversation, right? Here we are voting to make masks a local option for boards of education beginning February 28th. Hartford, for example, where I live, got rid of it a few weeks ago. So it evolves, right? And we've made rules for February. And we're not saying we're not going to be in February again. We'll be in March again. And we'll continue to look at the criteria. So I'm hoping to get feedback. Jason and I are hoping to get feedback from these leaders of the respective caucuses, and we'll revisit it. But today, it is the rule. I will say something at the beginning, and I expect everybody will comply with it.
Thanks. And what kind of feedback are you getting from the governor? Are you getting any a threat of a veto on any of this legislation?
No, SDE was not in favor of the 5-day waiver thing. They wrote us a letter last night, so we'll caucus that. We may have some different language that may make everybody a little happier that the majority leader and I talked about this morning. So we'll have a conversation about that, but I believe he's fine with everything else. The other thing that we struck a compromise on is there was this whole issue of the additional 7 days in our original bill, which might have meant that the mandate for masks in schools could get pushed back to March 7th. We sort of settled on language, so it will be February 28th. That 7-day waiting period goes away, but he also can't do it earlier than February 28th. And that was kind of the compromise last night.
And finally, the rule is that members of the public are still confined to the first floor. Is that right? I noticed a previously failed candidate for governor pontificating outside the House chamber yesterday afternoon.
That is the rule. And I believe he was told that, and he did respectfully leave. I also, Jason and I would say this, the press wanted to speak to him, and you all have a job to do, and you were trying to interview all of us. And so to make you all bring your cameras down there, is that fair? I don't know. But, we're trying not to make this a situation where everything's adversarial and we're all in each other's faces, and we're trying to be reasonable. And, the fact that he answered some questions in front of you media folks, I don't know. You're trying to do your job too. And so I might see that as a little different than, letting a bunch of people up who had no reason to be up there, for example.
Thank you.
Jody Latina, Channel 8.
Good morning. Can you clarify the boosters for the workers in long-term care facilities? Did I read that right? It goes away March 7th?
It doesn't go away. They have to get the booster by March 7th. We extended that. The original deadline was, I think, February 11th, and now it's March 7th to give them more time.
Okay. And do you,
But Jody, to be clear, the mandate goes away April 15th, if that makes sense. We don't extend it.
get them by March 7th, but you don't after April?
Well, the codification of the language expires April 15th. So there's two deadlines. If you don't get it by March 7th, it's probably not in your best interest from an employment perspective, but the overall mandate goes away April 15th, unless we extend it.
Do you fear that that's going to cause people to walk off the job?
Maybe some, I don't know. Jason, I don't know your perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they're just looking for additional time for individuals to get boosted. So there's certainly the possibility that some individuals will have to make that decision or could be impacted in that way. We're certainly hoping that's not the case.
What is the Go ahead.
Sorry, Jody, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what's the difference within a month if the mandate goes away in April?
Well, they'll lose their jobs. Right. And so the current law is tomorrow. So there's an extension, but if they don't have by March 7th, they won't be employed. And the advocates and the workers said, give us a little more time to try to persuade people. There's some situations where people might have had COVID, Omicron, and they're trying to figure out whether they should get the booster or not, and they want to wait a little while. We've heard that situation. But for anybody who believes that vaccines are not as effective or not working, the boosters are beyond working and beyond effective. And if you ask any hospital, they are not seeing boosted people who are in their ICUs. It is people who are unvaccinated by and large, or people who only got the 2 doses. Yes, there's a handful, and they're often people with immune compromised systems or who are older, but the boosters are working very, very, very well. And so if you're going to be around people that are susceptible, you should be boosted. I have no problem with that.
Who is the person or entity that oversees the long-term care facilities to make sure that that is being followed?
I assume it would be the same executive branch agencies that do it now, right?
DPA, Department of Public Health, regulates all our long-term care facilities.
Okay, so they're going around visiting, making sure all the staff have the boosters.
Correct.
Have you guys gotten any data on that? Have they disclosed that to you?
I think they have it available, but yeah. You could ask them for it, Jody. I'm pretty sure they have it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
We'll go to Abong from Public Radio.
Oh, there we go. So you can hear me. I just want to find out, do you have the votes? Are you sure that you're going to be able to pass this?
Yes.
That's it.
Hugh McQuaid, News Junkie.
Hey, quick off-topic question. You guys had a couple members yesterday, retiring members, suggesting that maybe it was time for a pay raise. It's been a couple decades. What are your thoughts on that? And does that have any legs?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it for some years now. It was even part of the bipartisan budget discussions. I think my kind of rule has been, Jason may have his own metric, if 50% of both caucuses are willing to vote for it, I will put it on the board. But it's not going to be carried by Dems, and it shouldn't be carried by ours. So if 50 plus 1 or 50, both chambers put themselves on an amendment, I'd call it. Yep.
What are your thoughts personally?
I mean, listen, everybody's in a different situation, right? This isn't, my full-time employment. So most of us have a job outside of this, so not relying on this exclusively to support our families and our lives. There's probably, a lot of valid arguments that could be made about who's able to participate in the legislative process by virtue of how much you can make. Would it allow us to spend more time, more in-depth time on a lot of the difficult policy issues that we face? There's a benefit to that. I also think there's a benefit to a part-time legislator that has most members actually still grounded in something outside of politics. So, there's a debate to be had on it. I'd be open to it. Not my number one priority right now.
Yeah, and I agree with Jason. I would never advocate for a full-time legislature. I'm not there. But if you wanted to increase the pay and it was bipartisan, yeah. I mean, it has to be a reasonable increase, right? It shouldn't be 100% or something like that. But yeah, it might be time to do that. It's been 17 or 20
There
years.
is a commission that has made recommendations about adjusting pay for elected officials as well, too. So there is a process for at least recommendations being made on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark Paz from the Mirror.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask your thoughts. The governor was quite strong that he does not want to see the school year shortened even temporarily for this year. What are your thoughts on going less than 180 days?
Yeah, so there'll be a tweak to that. We're going to caucus it. There's probably some language that may work a little better for everybody that we'll brief the caucus on. We've heard complaints. It's controversial on the other side too. I mean, I can't stress enough what I've heard from the representatives from Ansonia about how unfair they think that is and their teachers think that is. But we've heard all sides, and we think there's a better way to address it. And we'll probably have some language this afternoon that everybody can live with.
Well, what's the rationale for shortening it?
Well, the problem is this, right? For a district like that had to miss an entire week because of COVID, right? And we don't know how many snow days there's going to be, which is why the new language may be helpful. You might be looking at 10, 11 days. Or what we don't know is in February, what if there is higher transmission, right? The thought behind this was as masks come off, you might see higher transmission. But we don't know that. So we're probably going to wait to see what actually happened before we make a final decision. But you could have a district trying to add 12, 13 days and having the kids there till July 1 in some examples. And I think that might be a bit extreme. The other example, which I was sensitive to, and a lot of members are, is you had some districts where only certain schools got closed. So they might be staying 5 days longer than their neighboring school. And if you have a kid in one school versus the other, does that cause problems? So we were trying to be helpful. There might be a better way to be helpful. And we think the new language will make everybody happy, including the governor.
Well, is that in the interest of the children or the adults, including the teachers?
For me personally, as a parent, if my kid if you asked me, should he go to school to July 1 or have the ability to do something else? Maybe does he sign up for summer camp on June 29th? That might be in his best interest. And I understand not every kid can go to summer camp, and that's the other side. But, I'm not sure that they should be there to July 1st either. And what if there's no air conditioning in the building? There's a lot of things you got to consider for that child as well.
Thank you.
Matt Karen, Fox 61.
I just wanted to follow up on Mark's question about the 180 days potentially changing. I noticed in the language it said it could be for a high infection rate or staffing shortages. But from what I read, the way that it reads, at least right now, is some of those days would be allowed to be taken in advance. I'm just wondering how that jives with high infection rates and staffing shortages. How is that something that you can project in advance?
Is this on the waiver bill again? Yeah. We're going to retweak the language. So I'd rather not talk about the existing language. We'll tweak it.